Does Anthony Albanese have a problem with the truth, as Peter Dutton has claimed? Well, unfortunately for us, Peter Dutton is correct. So in this video, I'm going to go through 5 major areas where Anthony Albanese has lied, so that you can make a more informed vote when you're voting at the election. And these 5 areas are not an exhaustive list, but they give you an idea about the type of character Anthony Albanese has. So let's start off with the mundane things that really, I'm not entirely sure why he even lied about them to begin with. For example, he lied about falling off a stage. Now, it was captured on video. There's video footage of it. It is documented, but he lies about it. I mean, he clearly fell, but he just says that he didn't.
Prime Minister, we saw that you fell from the stage in Cessnock this afternoon. Are you okay?
No, I stepped back 1 step. I didn't fall off the stage.
It looked like you went down. I'm glad to hear you're okay, though.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Just one leg went down, but I was sweet.
But there's video of it. It is mind-blowing to me that he lies about this. Now, this is despite the fact that it is recorded on video. So if he's lying about things that are just captured on video, it tells you about the types of things he's just prepared to lie about. He also has lied, in my opinion, about his relationship with the Greens. In particular, he's claimed that there'll be no deals with the Greens. Well, we need to verify that after the election, assuming Anthony Albanese is victorious. However, one of the areas where I think there is a very clear lie is he said that he doesn't know anything about the Greens candidate in his own seat that his campaign has preferenced second. This is what he said.
I wouldn't have been able to tell you if you'd have asked me who the candidate was. Last time out in this seat, I won on primaries. That's the way the system works. I got more than 50% of the vote. I look forward to people voting number 1 for me and then filling in all the numbers as they do to make sure it's a formal vote.
Now, do you even believe that? Do you believe that Anthony Albanese's team has decided to preference the Greens second without doing any research whatsoever about the candidate? Does he really expect us to believe that? Really? It is truly astounding to me that he thinks we are that stupid. And if Anthony Albanese really did no research on who his team is preferenced second in his own seat, then he is incompetent. So he's either lying or incompetent. Regardless, we can move on to some other large areas where Anthony Albanese has clearly lied. So let's talk about healthcare. Anthony Albanese has claimed that Peter Dutton is going to gut Medicare. He's just claimed this on Twitter and in voice recordings and in video.
Here's something you need to know. This is a make or break election for Medicare. On one hand, you've got Labor making sure you can see a doctor for free. On the other, you've got Peter Dutton, who tried to end bulk billing for good.
However, Anthony Albanese is clearly lying. He's lying because not only is he wrong, but he's been told that he's wrong to his face, and it would clearly be documented that he is wrong, and he just persists with the line. It is therefore a lie, in my opinion, because he does and should know better. So to make this clear, Peter Dutton has promised to match the $9 billion that the Labour government is spending on Medicare. So Peter Dutton wants to spend $9 billion more on Medicare, but Anthony Albanese is claiming that Peter Dutton is going to gut it. The two don't compute. Spending $9 billion more is not gutting Medicare. Anthony Albanese also lied about his plans for Medicare. He's claimed that you'd be able to see a GP for free.
This piece of green and gold is a source of Australian pride, because when you need to see a doctor in this country, this is all you should need, not your credit card. And with Labor's historic boost to bulk billing right across the country, you'll be able to see a doctor for free.
That's verifiably false. Doctors have specifically said that under his plan, you would not be able to see a GP for free. So the people he expects to be doing the work have specifically said his plan is not happening because the money is not there and his plan is unworkable. Basically, the reason for this is he wants to try to increase the incentives for the GP clinics to bulk bill more. However, here's the rub. You only get the incentives really if you bulk bill literally every patient. But this means that GPs would see their income go down, so they would not do it. i.e. the GPs have no incentive to switch over to his scheme, which means that seeing a GP for free simply won't happen. His plan is unworkable and he's misleading people by saying that you would be able to see a GP for free because you won't. And on the topic of fiscal matters, let's talk about his fiscal issues. Now, I'm only going to touch on a couple of things here because there are a lot of areas where I believe we've been misled. But let's talk about a couple. The first one is in relation to debt. Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers have claimed that they have reduced debt. That's verifiably false. They have not reduced debt. Debt has gone up under their watch. Debt has increased. But they both say that debt has decreased. I mean, it's just factually wrong. The government's own data tells us that debt has gone up. It's obviously a lie to say that it's decreased, but they just persist on saying it. It's truly mind-boggling. Then we've got the one about energy prices. We're all familiar with their promise to cut energy prices by $275, but energy prices have increased, and the only areas in which they might have decreased are where they've amped up a lot of subsidies that are temporary. Those subsidies expire. When the subsidies expire, prices go way back up. It is disingenuous to say you're going to reduce energy prices and then realize just before the election time that you haven't reduced energy prices, so you bring in a subsidy that is set to expire after the election. They're basically just pulling the wool over people's eyes. Energy prices did not go down. And on the topic of fiscal matters, let's talk about tax. Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers outright lied about tax, in my opinion. Firstly, we've got the Stage 3 tax cuts. Anthony Albanese said they would deliver the Stage 3 tax cuts in full, but they didn't.
Tax cuts will happen in July, and we're
the same as what we're committed to?
We're committed to that. Well, we haven't changed our position.
We haven't changed our position.
Rolling out any changes to the tax.
We have a budget in a couple of weeks. Our position hasn't changed.
The Stage 3 tax cuts, Prime Minister, are you still wedded to those?
We haven't changed our position on that, but I recognise that there's a range of views out there.
You are ruling out a change to the Stage 3 tax cuts? I mean, you need a circuit breaker, don't you?
Well, we've made no decisions along those lines. We're not reconsidering that position.
Are the Stage 3 tax cuts still affordable?
Well, they're legislated and they're there, and they begin, of course, at $45,000. We haven't changed our position.
What they did is they reduced the size of the tax cut, and in so doing, they effectively created a tax hike, because there was a previously legislated tax cut, which they reversed, which means it's a tax hike. So when Anthony Albanese says they're cutting taxes for all Australians, they are not. They hiked taxes for at least some Australians in that respect. Secondly, we've got superannuation. Anthony Albanese said that they would not touch superannuation taxes, but they have been trying to do so. For example, they're trying to bring in Division 296, which would impose a tax on unrealised capital gains within superannuation. Initially, it would only apply to superannuation balances above $3 million. However, when Labor is doing a deal with the Greens, well, the Greens want that threshold reduced to $2 million. So that would catch up a lot more Australians than 3 million. But not only that, it is not indexed. So that means that in 20 years' time or 40 years' time, when young Australians are retiring, all of them are going to be caught up. So put this in perspective. Say the stock market is growing at 10% per year, which it often does roughly on average if we're looking at the S&P 500, growing at 10% per year. Then in 40 years' time, when say a 20-year-old is retiring, well, that $3 million is equivalent to $66,000. Younger Australians are especially hit by that superannuation tax. But it also gets worse, because they've set a precedent. When they bring in a tax on unrealised capital gains in a small area, obviously the plan is to expand it. It's clear, because this always happens under Labor. They start small, then expand it. You need to stop the precedent at the get-go. And it gets worse still, because this is effectively a wealth tax and an inheritance tax by stealth. Because when people are saving up a lot of money in superannuation, they will often be inherited by, for example, a spouse or maybe their kids. So therefore, Labor is bringing in effectively an inheritance tax as well. Labor's amping up taxes massively and claiming they're cutting taxes for everyone. It's an outright lie. When Anthony Albanese says it's tax cuts for everyone, well, not on net. There's a small tax cut that is offset by the other major tax hikes. Anthony Albanese is lying about tax. And this leads me on to the final area I want to touch on here, which is about Indigenous affairs. Anthony Albanese has persistently lied about this continually. So let's just look at a few choice examples. One, he said there'd be no treaty with Indigenous Australians.
As part of the Uluru Statement, we have a voice, we have treaty, we have truth-telling. As part of a treaty, won't there be compensation? If there is, I mean, that's not totally unexpected.
This isn't about a treaty, Ben.
But there are three parts of the Uluru Statement.
Yeah, and this is
So
not.
you're talking
this
about
is
the
not
voice.
about a treaty.
But as part of treaty, which we
This
guess will be a following step,
This is not about a
do
treaty.
you foresee that compensation would be
This
paid?
is not about a treaty.
However, he had been spending money toward a Makarrata Commission. $5.8 million in a budget was earmarked toward the Makarrata Commission, which is designed to lead to a treaty. If there's not going to be a treaty, why are you spending money on it? The next issue is he lied about the Uluru Statement. He said it was only one page.
The Uluru Statement from the Heart, which I tabled, the one-page document. The one-page document.
Which is not exactly correct. It's one page on the website. However, there's a lot of background documents that are also called the Uluru Statement developed underlying that one-page document. I.e., there's a much longer document, also entitled the Uluru Statement, which provides more detail and background on the one page that you see online. And the one page you see online has such vague and broad terms that they require definition. So that means that the Uluru Statement also includes the definitions of what they mean by an agreement making or a Makarrata Commission or various things like that. So therefore it is simply disingenuous to claim that the Uluru Statement is only one page, because it is not. Second, he would claim the voice had no power and was just an outstretched hand or a gracious gesture.
That's what the voice is, an advisory committee whose only power is the power of its ideas.
However, that is incorrect. The voice was not just an outstretched hand or a gracious gesture, it would have had actual power. And as I've said myriad times before, this is because the voice would give funding and access to one group of Australians that no other group would have, and no other group would have a constitutionally enshrined right to have. So what that means is that group would have the funding and ability to go and make representations to the executive and to Parliament. And when they're making representations to the executive and to Parliament, well, if you're the only person in the room, then you have power. Furthermore, the right to make representations entails a right to be consulted. Next, his claim that the voice is over, but it clearly is not, as Penny Wong has indicated in her recent slip-up during a podcast.
Look, I think we'll look back on it in 10 years' time and it'll be a bit like marriage equality, don't you reckon? Like I always used to say, marriage equality, which took us such a bloody fight to get that done. And I thought, all this fuss, it'll become something. It'll be like people go, do we have an argument about that? They won't even like it. Kids today or even adults today barely kind of clock that it used to be an issue.
Now, Anthony Albanese had tried to walk this back, but of course there's only so much that he can do about that. Do we believe Anthony Albanese, or do we believe Penny Wong? Do we believe Penny Wong was having a moment of truth, or do we believe Anthony Albanese's denials? So overall, therefore, I think that Anthony Albanese has been very disingenuous with the electorate. He seemingly is just lying about the small things and misleading us about very big things as well. And it seems to be so endemic in his campaign and so endemic in his rhetoric that I don't know how anyone can believe anything he says. When he, for example, rules out changes to so-called negative gearing or capital gains tax, why on earth would we believe him? He has form breaking promises. He has form misleading us. However, it appears a certain portion of the electorate is just going to fall for it. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Do you believe what Anthony Albanese says? Or do you think maybe we should take what he says with a grain of salt? Let me know your thoughts.